Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. We are live for the announcement of the Springbok side to face Scotland after a very good win against England. The question is, has Rassie Erasmus changed? And the answer is yes. Rassie Erasmus has named a very interesting 23 to take on Scotland, and they have rung the changes. Only 5 players involved in the test against England will feature this weekend. It is a brand new front row. It's a new lock combination. It is a new 9-10 combination, and it's an all Bulls 9-10. Ambrose Papier back in the mix. And really, really good to see that he is going to get an opportunity today. And very excited to sort of see what the thinking is with this team that Rassie's kind of gone with. So if we look at the Rassie Erasmus team that has been named, 1 through 23, I don't think there's any sort of continuity, in inverted commas, but apart from the likes of Paul de Villiers, Ruan Nokia, and Jesse Creel getting a go. But Damian Willemse retained in the side, but has had a positional switch. He'll move from 15 down to 12 in, I think, one of the most exciting announcements. But let's go through the side, shall we? 1 through to 15, Bowen Venter, Johan Grobbelaar, Wilco Louw, Kobus Wiese, Ruan Nokia, Paul de Villiers, Peter Steph de Toy, Evan Roos, Ambrose Papier, Honjay Pollard, Kanan Moody, Damian Willemse, Jesse Creel, Edel van der Merwe, Apelele Fassi. It is then a 6-2 split that features Jan-Hendrik Wessels, Instuka Klunu, Zach Porthen, Ben Jason Dixon, Vincent Tutuka, Albert Lowe, Grant Williams, and Quine Horn. So that is the side that has been named. And Peter Steph de Toy will captain it after doing a good job against England. This is a side that is all about opportunities. Now, people, it's a side to take your chance. And there's a lot of players who I think have taken their chance in the last couple of weeks when they've gotten the opportunity. And there's some players who are getting another opportunity, kind of been in and around the Boks mix for a while, haven't quite managed to sort of nail down that starting spot or a spot in the squad. And there's opportunities here. And I'm talking about the likes of an Evan Roos, who's been in and out of the squad and has never really been able to translate that URC form, that form that we've seen with the Stormers, into the Boks camp. You get the chance against a good Scottish side. And this is, I think, what's so exciting. A little bit like what we saw last year when Rassie rotated against New Zealand. This is an opportunity for a lot of players against a very, very good side. So last year we rotated against New Zealand and we saw 2 different sides play against New Zealand. And ironically, it was the more settled, more experienced side that lost to New Zealand, and then we saw quite an inexperienced side, new look side, go and thump them. So it was an interesting situation to be in, and we've gone with a bit of a similar situation now, where I think Scotland could arguably pose a greater threat than England if you look at just how good they were, in Argentina. A really, really good performance from them, and I think that it's going to be a really good opportunity for these players to sort of show what they're worth. And it's going to be an opportunity for players to start putting down World Cup markers. It's if we look at this side, the likes of a Ambrose Papier is back in the mix, not making his debut this weekend, but it kind of feels like a second debut. A player who dropped off the radar, started playing really, really well for the Bulls, still couldn't really get a call up, played another very good season. They couldn't ignore him any longer. And not only is he no longer being ignored, but he's getting an opportunity to start this weekend. And a big game for him, I think, would see him put himself into the World Cup selection mold. You've got a feel for Morne van den Berg, who'll be watching this game on his couch this weekend, because this should have been his game time. But Ambrose Papier has been in the kind of form where you can't ignore it. And let's hope he can translate it, because if you can translate half the form that he was bringing to the URC, then we should be really excited. Front row, Bowen Venter, Mr. Reliable, Wilco Louw back, big units, literally big units. And hopefully we'll get some more scrums. Didn't get as many scrums as we kind of would like and would normally have in a in a Boks, especially in that first half. So we need to try and change that, get some more scrums going, get our front row kind of into it. In terms of the centres, I love Damian Willemse at 12. I think that he is such a dynamic player. You know, he's obviously got the ability to get go forward ball. Maybe not necessarily always as direct as Damien Dealindi, but he's got the step. He's got the kicking game. You know, he's got that the distribution game as well. Playing next to Andre Pollard, who is a very different player to Amani Liebach. Big pressure, I think, on Andre. And Rusty will say there isn't, but he hasn't been very good recently for the Bulls. Struggled in those last couple of games. And, you know, with Sasha out, we're down to Mani, we're down to Andre. He needs to kind of remind us of the class he has. And we all know the player that's there, but we just need to see it in terms of a form point of view. Kane Moodian's number 11, Edel van der Merwe in number 14. I think it's a bit of a shootout, to be honest, for your third choice wing. I think Edel van der Merwe is scoring tries for fun. This is his first real big test, though. You know, he's played games against Barbarians and Wales and the likes, and he's scored lots of tries, even against Italy. But now you're playing against a proper Scottish side. So this is a big test for Edel van der Merwe to kind of continue that try-scoring record. And then we look at the bomb squad. You know, the 6-2 split, that is a very, very good and very powerful side. You know, so you've got Jan-Hendrik Wessel, Instuka, Zachary Paulson. I mean, that might be the quickest replacement front row in the history of Boks and rugby at this stage. I mean, Instuka, Zach Paulson, you know, those are players who didn't even play prop at school a lot. You know, they played in the loose trio. I mean, Instuka got the 400-meter record, for example, at school. Zach Paulson played a lot of rugby at 8th man. Jan-Hendrik Wessel is a player that's been at prop and hooker, but can also play in the loose trio because they're so quick and powerful around the park. So, I mean, that's the team, especially with Grant Williams coming on the second half, that can really up the tempo. And I think that's what I'm really excited about, is that we're not seeing necessarily a bomb squad of giants coming on. Yes, Ben Jason Dixon's a big physical player. Vincent Tuka's not small. But we're not seeing, you know, an Archia Sneema and Loert Diaga, Jasper Visa, you know, big, burly, massive players coming on to really bully them. We're actually seeing a very athletic, quick around the park, high tempo type of replacement, which I think shows kind of the thing that maybe it's going to be a bit more structured up front. I mean, you've got your big players like Kobus Visa, Wilco Lobo, and Fenter. These are big units who are going to really impose themselves. And then we've got the ability to up the ante. There's the sign above Loftus, which, as you walk out, which says, you know, that has the altitude and says it matters. Well, I'll tell you what, when you look at that replacement bench, for example, if you're Scotland and you are feeling gassed at 60 minutes and you watch those players coming on, you just know you're not going to get a reprieve. You know, you're going to be run off your feet. You're going to have them coming up and really, having a go throughout the game and tired legs at altitude. And then you've got those sort of players who I mean, look at Zach Paulson's carry last weekend and how powerful he is. Instuka is the loosehead version of that. Jan-Hendrik Wessels is the kind of hooker version of that. So big ball carrying threats, but quick as well around the park. And I think that what will be interesting to see, for example, is your Damien Valensa, you know, who will play 12, but Andre Pollard can shift to 12 if you wanted to. But I think the big interesting call is a Quine Horn, who is going to come on. Where will he come on? Will he come on at 15? Will he come on at 10? You know, and then see that. And that's where I think the reason for that experiment with Quine Horn was to see if he can potentially be an option at 10 for the Boks. And in a 6-2 split, that was kind of what the Rassi said. He said that in a 6-2 split sense, can he do that job? You know, can he be that option? And I'm just checking to see if Rassi Erasmus's comments have come through. So we have got an update as well, by the way. Evan Etzebeth, and this is what I'm checking over here, is officially out for the incoming tour. He will take no part in the next couple of weeks. Sia Khaleesi potentially back for next week is the chat that I'm seeing over here. And Loert Diaga also, Franklin Mostert also in and around. So hopefully we'll see that over there. So some interesting news as well with the no Evan. Hopefully, apparently now he's targeting Argentina to potentially come back. But what do we think of the side? Let me know in the comments. Let's have a chat and let me know what you think of what's a very rotated side and where we think this game might be won and lost. Because it's not the team we expect. We expected changes. I'm not sure we expected this kind of a change, but I think the main thing is it's you always have to expect the unexpected with Rassie. So we kind of never surprised and yet always surprised in a way, because I think we don't want to underestimate Scotland. You don't want to go and say, oh well, we've played what I would call our stronger side against England, and then you kind of underestimate Scotland, and maybe you come up short. So there is that, not worry, but you got to be cautious. You got to be cautioned against that. The big thing is, and this is where we've been moving towards for a while, is that we've got so much depth that we name a side like this, and we don't see Siya Kolisi, Evan Etzebeth, a Miley Bok, a Damien Delendi. We don't see Kirkley Lawrence and Cheslin Colby. We don't see a Jasper Wiese, but we're not panicking here. We really aren't panicking. We are looking at a situation where we're sitting there going, well, that's fine. We are quite happy not to have those players because we still back the rest. And it's an amazing situation that we can kind of create this depth that I think is going to be the reason why we are the favorites for this Nations Championship, because the depth in the Boks is incredible. And it's a two-edged sword, because at the end of the day, you give these players a chance. Now, if they come up short on Saturday, then it's a case of you're going to go, well, the old guard still has it in them. But if they go and win, for example, against a very, very good Scottish side, then all of a sudden you in a situation where you're going, well, we can basically pick any side. And that is so difficult from an opposition coach point of view, for example, and teams to try and analyze this Boks. And that's why we keep talking about the difference in the Boks types of players makes us so unpredictable, not just in terms of who we're going to pick, but how we're going to play. Because when we play a Andre Pollard, we are going to inevitably play differently to when we play a Mani Libbok. That is just the reality. That when we select different players, we select different characteristics, and there's no right or wrong answer to this. There's no right. I don't. We've moved away from kind of the A team, B team type of thing. I still think that to a certain degree, you've got players who will, if you're playing in a World Cup final tomorrow, will inevitably be on that team sheet. And I talk about a Malcolm Marx, obviously world player of the year, Peter Steph, the toy, your Kirkley Lawrences, your Cheslin Colbys, Jesse Creel, Damien Delende right now. There's no doubt that those are still kind of your A runners, inverted commas, but we really are ready to give everyone a chance, because we back them to be able to, and that's the thing, we're kind of backing our second team to be able to beat most tier 1 nations, and we've proven that by playing them against New Zealand. Now we're playing them against Scotland. So we're walking the talk. We're not just bringing players into the squad so they can hold tackle bags and go back to their clubs. Players are coming in, players are getting caps, and we're building genuine depth so that come the World Cup next year, we're not going to see debuts at the World Cup. We won't. Maybe some player comes through that just has an incredible season and we kind of risk it, but we're not going to see debuts of the World Cup because we're just in such a strong position that all these players would have played and been capped. And Rassie is very intentional about trying to get so many different players into the mix, and get them up to sort of your 10, 15 caps, which is where Rassie wants some sort of players to be coming to the World Cup, that there is no surprise that all the players kind of get there and are ready for it. So what are we thinking, people? What are we all saying on the chat over here? Tanner's saying, see, I told you guys I was right the whole time. Tanner said I predicted the lineup from the very beginning. Well, go to my picks and thing, because you can't just throw things out like that without the proof here. We need to see the proof. And that's what my picks is for, is to put the clock on the block and to say, well, this is what I predicted. And so go and do that. Bucky's saying, this isn't the right team. The bench is different. This is very much the right team. I'm looking at it in front of me. Jan Vessels, Intuga Klunu, Zach Porthen, Ben Jason Dixon, Vincent Stuka, Albert Lowe, Grant Williams, Quine Horn. This is the press release that is sitting in front of me. So it is very much, that is indeed the bench. So I'm not sure where you've seen a different bench, but yeah, that is the right team. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you there. What sort of selection? And this is let me get the poll up. We want to do a start a poll. Do we like the team? Do you? I'm going to ask you because you're the one voting. Do you like the team that Rassie has picked? And if you don't, this is also a thing that that I don't like to see. If you don't like it, what don't you like to it? What would you change as well? Don't just say I don't like the team. Tell me what don't you like about it, and what would you change as well? That's also a very important thing. What would you change within the side, and not just say I don't like it. Well, who don't you like? What would you change? And but those you do like it, what are we looking like? What are we excited about? So I'm going through some of the comments over here. Mark Sony was saying Scotland have tough travelling. I don't have the depth to rest many players. I don't think the Boks team itself is underestimating them. Nevertheless, I give them zero chance. Andrew Carson says great team, a balance between veterans and new kids on the block. And Gerard said interesting side, very experimental, but also exciting with lots of young guys getting caps and experience. And Malabongo say not happy about team. Pollard Contender says, I reckon Willemse is our second choice kicker. Let's hope the epiphany that happened to Mani recently with his kicking will happen with Gaza, if he ever needs to worry about it. It's not we actually see much of Mani kicking. Also, I think Pollard is just in because Sasha is maybe still a bit injured. Sasha is very injured, not a bit injured. Sasha will not feature in this test, the next two, maybe at the end of the year to push, but at this stage, not looking good for the greatest rivalry tour, and not looking good for obviously the Nations Championship. He won't play any role in the next week or. Hopefully, maybe we might get him back for the end of the year, so the Nations Championship, but certainly not seeing him any time before then. Which is, yeah, it's frustrating because he's our golden boy, and going into the World Cup next year, he's definitely our first choice fly half at this stage, and we're going to miss a year of being able to put more caps into him. But I think what's so exciting is the fact that we backed him so early in his career that he has been able to already get several caps into him. He's not coming in. He's not going to go to the World Cup blind next year. He's going to have the kind of experience when he gets back from injury. So Captain says I'd swap Kanan for Mapimpi maybe. Mapimpi not even in the squad at the moment. Arctic says JJ should get a call up if Eben is out. What else are we saying? Yeah. Francis says Ambrose and Grant. Yeah, let's talk about Ambrose Papier, shall we? Ambrose Papier has just given the Boks management no option but to pick him. He has been hammering down that door for a while, and everyone kept saying, "What more does he need to do? What more can he do? To get himself into that side." And eventually he got the call up to the lineman camp and had very good playoffs. And I think, now we're going to say, okay, well, you've shown us that you've got the form for the Bulls. Can you do that for us, though? Can you translate that form back into the mix? Because at the end of the day, the way he was playing, you just kind of had to pick him. And you can kind of talk about maybe he didn't fit the mold and the likes of that. But unfortunately, you get to the point where you struggle to see the way he plays, how he can't fit into the mix, because it's like it just looks so obvious. He looks so good for the Bulls, and you look at the kicking game, you look at the way he scores tries, the sniping, the game management, and I just said, you got to the point where you're sitting there saying I can't see where he doesn't fit in. But a big thing, by the way, for those watching is please, first of all, please do smash a like on the video, and smash a like if you like the team. 85%. So we've got 15% of people saying they don't like the team. Again, I haven't seen too many people saying why they don't like the team. Although Alder Tier saying I have absolutely no faith in Lewis at international level. If I'm being honest, I'm worried about him at 8 in a very changed team. In a settled team, it is one thing. In this team, not for me. And that's an interesting point, actually, because So often these players get trialed in these rotated sides, and there's a certain amount of yes, kind of they play a lot together, they'll do a lot of preparation together, so they kind of gel. But also once they get into the actual onto the match, these are all players who kind of aren't as experienced in international level. So there is a certain amount of they're all kind of trying to prove themselves. And it's definitely not the best environment to try and make the biggest impact. Like you go and drop Evan Lewis into the team from last week, and that's kind of, I think, to your point, it's a lot easier to kind of cope. Now when you kind of start to experiment, it becomes a bit more difficult. But Evan Lewis, I think, is got to start stepping up. I mean, he's a senior player for the Stormers. He's 26 years old now, still very young, but he's a senior player. He's been playing at the top level 4 or 5 years, so there's no excuse anymore. He needs to start putting that big performance in, that impact, that look at me, I'm here type of performance. Bartley says, I love the changes reflected in my picks. This is a challenging to see to these players to say, go and exceed the set standard. It also gives a lot in terms of camaraderie within the squad. And Kutler reckons that Vusi Moya should have been on the bench. We might see him against Wales. It'd be very cool if we do. But what I was saying is that, first of all, I said, please do continue to hit that like button. But if you would like to go and watch the Boks this year, which is very expensive at the moment, your best chance of going to watch the Boks versus New Zealand is to become a member of the channel. We are giving away 2 tickets to that game at the F&B Stadium, exclusively to our members club. And if you join the members club today, you can go be part of that draw, which will be happening in August. So go and consider joining the members club and coming and joining the vibes. You also get lots of other benefits, such as you can join our WhatsApp community where all the latest information goes. It goes up on the WhatsApp community before anywhere else. You also get some very cool things like, if we look at yesterday, we did our Rugby Unlocked first episode where we kind of analysed the Boks versus England as well as New Zealand versus France. Ronaldo Mayer, who's a former Cheetahs analyst, is part of the show, and he's done 2 presentations on those games, and we will be sending the PDFs out to our members. So if you want to know more about rugby, if you want to get the latest news and be part of the channel community, please do consider becoming a member. It is the link in the comments, and come and join the vibes. Seasway says, Ruas is the most talented number 8, Hanekom is the most technically sound, and Visa the most physical. I'm glad Ruas has his chance. Dylan says, it's a good team, but the last time wholesale changes was made like this, we lost to Wales. No, the last time we made wholesale changes like this was definitely not that Wales game. 2 years ago? The last time we made wholesale changes like this, well, to be fair, we made wholesale changes last time we played against Wales, and we won. We also made wholesale changes against the All Blacks last year and had a record victory afterwards. We do wholesale changes quite often, actually. To a certain degree, maybe it's not quite wholesale anymore because it's kind of normal and just regular. But Kiku Land says, Ruas, the liability with his discipline, have been giving away silly penalties every time he plays for the Boks. Quinton says, the last time we did big changes like this, we walloped New Zealand and Wellington. Exactly. That was what I was alluding to. So at the moment, 86% of the votes saying, yep, they like it, they don't like it. Somebody was saying that you can't play Marnie because Colby isn't there to kick. I would disagree there. I think you can play Marnie. We actually haven't seen his kicking in the last game, obviously, but in Japan, it's been very good. He's been doing a lot of work over there. And even towards the end of last year, the percentage, for example, if you looked at his kind of recent form, his percentage of goal kicking has gone up quite high. You also had Damien Willemse there. And let's also not pretend like Cheslin Colby's been a goal kicker for like all these years. It's quite a new development, in inverted commas. So in many ways, that was kind of an experiment. I think this is a big win as well for the likes of Ruan Nokia, because he is very much nailed down that number 5 jersey. You got a Franco Moster around, but injuries are hampering him a little bit. Lua Diaga, much the same. Archia, same, much the same. And then you've got somebody like a Ruan Nokia who just week in, week out is available. It makes a big difference, makes a big impact. He's become the Franco Mostert regen, really. Just week after week, he puts in consistent performances. And that's what we need, especially in the number 5 jersey, is someone who can control the line very well, which he does superbly. Somebody who can really produce an 80-minute performance that can always get around the park. throughout the game and do the hard yards, because it's easy to do, not easy, but it's great having an RKS Neyman who can kind of throw in the chicken wing passes and the likes of that, but you also need someone who's going to do the hard yards. And Ronok here is very much that kind of player. And I think that's also, he's going off to Japan next season, and I think you had to almost wait to be settled enough in the Boks squad to be able to go and make that kind of career move, because you don't get picked out of Japan unless you are already in the box and within the setup. So I'm sure there would have been kind of conversations with the Bok management to say, listen, I'm thinking I want to go over to Japan. They're probably quite chuffed about that, because they like the kind of minutes that they play and they get a bit more rest than when they play for the likes of the Bulls. And they know that from a quality point of view, he's got the quality. He's settled in there. He's a core member of the squad. He's going to get picked out of Japan. Now is a good time to move. Somebody like a Kubas Visa, kind of only back on the Bok radar after coming back here, and putting himself on the front foot. Bone Fenter making the signing to come back to the Lions, play rugby in South Africa, be on the right there in front of the Bok management every single week. If we look at the bench, big opportunity here for Vincent Tuka, who I thought, and ironically made his debut just over a year ago at Loftus, and I thought he had a very good debut. We didn't see much of him afterwards. He's kind of dropped out of the squad. Now he's back in the squad. He had a good season for the Sharks, so he's definitely on the way up. But him and Ulrich Lowe, for example, they're kind of competing for the similar spot in the squad. Vincent Tuka being able to cover lock is a big benefit for him, as well as being a very good line operator. Ulrich Lowe is somebody who 2 years ago you wouldn't even dream of him not being in the squad, the way he was being deployed as part of the bomb squad and the impact squad. And then all of a sudden he wasn't even in the squad a couple of weeks ago when it was initially announced. And then he was brought into the squad as a later addition. So these are two players who are on the edges. And this is where you can make a mark. You go and put in a man-of-the-match performance, same as an Ambrose Papier, for example, same as an Evan Lewis. You go put in a man-of-the-match performance against Scotland on Saturday. You put yourself in the World Cup frame. Those are players who I think right now are probably not in the World Cup frame. Maybe kind of in and around there, but not definitely within the World Cup frame. And they need to change that. They want to make sure that they are a big part of that World Cup frame. What's an interesting omission is no Cameron Hanekom, and I think that I would be interested to know if he would have played had we not had that injury to Eben, because obviously Cameron Hanekom last week started in number 7 jersey. PSTF the toy shifted to lock, and as a result, Cameron Hanekom went in. So I think if Eben hadn't got injured, I'd be interested to have seen if they would have gone with Cameron Hanekom in the number 7 jersey this week, for example. Maybe kept Peter Steph the toy in number like a 5 and as captain. But they obviously wanted to bring in a Kubas Visa for this week, and obviously they've also been able to give Cameron Hanekom decent amount of minutes. So that might have been a potential change, a bit of a tweak, because he was obviously going to be on the bench last week. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him start again next week. But it's an interesting omission for him to have been drafted into the lineup late and then kind of excluded from the 23 altogether. Obviously, as I said, we are rotating and giving players opportunities. I mean, no Malcolm Marks in the side, no Thomas Dutoy in the side. There's lots of players who have dropped out of the 23 completely. But the players who kind of remain, I think, are key players. Runok here, that's your key line-out operator. Also, he knows Johan Kobela and Jan Hendrik Wessels as well. So, in terms of a line-out perspective, combinations are very important here. And we're also seeing that in combinations. We're seeing that they're playing Ambrose Papier and Hanjay Pod, who have had a season playing together. So that combination is the same. Instuka Kuntunu and Zach Porthen are also players who play at the Stormers. So that's they know each other well from a scrummaging point of view. Obviously, Jan Hendrik Wessels comes into the middle. I mean, if you had put a Jan Hendrik Wessels next to a Wilco Low, he would have known him a bit better. But if Andrew Hugo Fenter was on the side, he'd probably be in the reserve hooker, and you'd have a complete Stormers front row. So I think that they very much have also looked at combinations, and I really want to see the Willemse and Jesse Creel combination get some time, because I think what we might see moving forward is Wayman Willemse moving from 15 into the 12 towards the later stages of the game to be able to give us something a bit different. Luke G says, I think this is a very dynamic team. I feel like it's going to be a high-impact running game. I'm so stoked that Evan is starting. I rate him highly and believe he will shine on Saturday. And Side to Canvas says, I like the fact that Rusty is trying out every combination possible. I mean, why not at this point? Bok in Kiwi Land says, with Libok and Sasha, do we really think Andre Pollard will be going to the Rugby World Cup next year, as traditionally only 2 flyers get picked for the initial squad? Well, I think, again, we can probably afford to pick 3 because Sasha can play 10, 12, 15. Willemse covers 12 and 15. Quan Horn now potentially 15, 10. If they genuinely back him as an option at 10, then that doesn't bode well for somebody like an Andre Pollard. Because I think it is a case of, well, you only cover really one position. Maybe you might be third choice. To be honest, we'd probably rather take this player who covers a couple of positions and we think he can do a decent job. To not go to the World Cup with Andre Pollard, who's won back-to-back World Cups, would be quite a big call. And I don't see it happening. I think that, unless he starts to struggle this year, I think he does go to the World Cup. But it is an interesting situation where all of a sudden the Golden Boy has dropped down the pecking order and might not. The fact that there's conversations about him potentially not is interesting in itself. So what else have we got to say in the land? So Ode Eustace says, we should not sleep on Scotland. Very good side. Going to be a big day for Gaza. Asino Tupolati will come whole day. And I mean, how nice is that? Is the opportunity for him to, he played a lot of rugby at inside centre. Let's not pretend he hasn't. But now, cool, you're pulling on the block 12 and you've got a Tupolati in front of you. So this is not an opportunity for you to play 12 against a tier 2 nation or a side struggling. You've got one of the best centres in the world who is likely to be opposite you. And that's where I personally think, I think Damien Willemse goes and plays a full international season at inside centre, and I think he'd be one of the best inside centres in the world. I just think he's one of the best players in the world. So, and wherever you play him, I think he adds a lot of value. Whether it's, 10, I don't think is his best position, but he can do it if needs be. But 12 and 15, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. His aerial contesting over the weekend was incredible. And also, if you look at our side coming in, Kenan Moody, good under the high ball. I played a Fussy, good under the high ball last week. So, it's a good point that Aldo T is saying, is Estes is concussed, guessing he would have started 12 if he was fit. We were actually talking about it in our prediction show, which, by the way, we're miles away from. I think somebody said we got 3 right from the prediction show earlier. Well, I technically didn't add much to it. I kind of just ran the votes, but yeah, I think it's a case of, you never know what Russ is going to do, and it's always a bit of a gamble, and that's why I think the My Picks is becoming so much fun, because good luck trying to predict Rusty's thinking. And if you can, well, good on you. And I think, I'm trying to think of, against Wales, we'll probably see more changes. Maybe sort of similar types of players, but I think we will see a bit of other players. And Rusty's actually said that this is not necessarily a team that's been picked for Scotland, so he's not picked this side to say, right, Scotland's got X, Y, Z, we need to factor that in. This is a side that's been picked because he says we want to know what we've got going into the World Cup. So World Cup next year is the big carrot. And this Nations Championship, I wouldn't say it's a distraction, but we're treating it as an opportunity to play as different players. Yes, we want to win, and we want to win every single game, but a lot of it's kind of, we want to make sure we test players, we want to win games with these players, give them the confidence, for example. In doing so, we obviously put ourselves in top spot to potentially go and win the Nations Championship. But we are not so star-studded in terms of, we've got to get this big trophy. We're not sitting here worrying about our silverware. This thing's going to fall apart. That we are going to keep our same team. We are going, I think it's a case of we will rotate and win the games. And if we enter the mix for come Nations Championship at the end of the year, great. If we don't win it, oh well. Greatest Rivalry Tour for me will be very interesting because it's 4 tests. against a proper side. I mean, one of the best sides in the world. So in one breath, you don't want to lose the greatest rivalry tour. You really want to win all 3 tests at least and win the series. At the same time, if you ever wanted to trial players against some of the best in the world, that's also a great opportunity to do it, because you do have 4 tests. An ideal situation, you kind of win the first 3, rotate for the America test, and then you kind of got the best of both worlds. But right now, we've basically picked, right, this is going to be the Scotland test, this is going to be the Wales team. Obviously, we picked the England team, and the idea is to keep winning whilst we do change these teams and give everybody a run out and sort of see how they cope. Herman says, all we see is mobility, and a gangster front row to totally outscrum the Scots. And that's what I said earlier, especially with our bomb squad, inverted commas. It's almost like the running squad. It's not your traditional bulky, big, we're going to bully you in the second half physically. And I say that, look at how barbaric Zach Portland was when he just ran over and literally started throwing around English players over the weekend. But he's quick around the park. If you had to do a 100-meter sprint, Wilco Low versus him, throwing Thomas Toy there, it's not going to go well for the other two. Zach Portland is quick around the park. Instuka Tunu is rapid and big. So we're certainly not going to not have the physicality, but it's not the traditional 2019 kind of vibe, where even Frans Steyn coming off the bench was quite a large lad. It's not where we saw like Archies Neyman, Loet de Jager, and Jasper Wiese coming off the bench with an Oxen Chair and a Trevor Nyakane and a Malcolm Marks at a stage. That was proper, like, big, huge units. We're going to scrum you to death. We're going to maul. And now we're seeing a different breed of players coming through where they're very mobile, and yet don't let you down at scrum time. There's no doubt that Wilco Low is a better scrummager than Zach Portland. But look at the improvement Zach Portland's made. And I think this is what Oxen Chair was saying the other day. He said Zach's come along so fast since last year by being in the box setup. And that's the whole thing. You're taking a player like a Zach Portland and saying, right, well, we know he's always been ahead of the curve. He's under 20 captain. He's a very talented player. Played Varsity Cup and the likes of that. But you're looking at him saying, right, well, what do we like about him? We like the fact that he's mobile. We know he's a good leader. He's got good rugby IQ, but he's nice and physical around the park, makes good tackles, and good skill set. But for him to be a block down the line, we need him to be a top scrummager. So instead of basically saying to him, well, by the way, the feedback to John Dobson and to Brock Harris, the thing, we need you to improve him. No. Come to the camp. Right, you're now going to scrum against Ox. You're now going to scrum against Gerard Stennekamp. You're going to scrum against Bowen Venter. You're going to have a Bok pack behind you, so you're going to feel what that Bok pack is like. You're going to feel like, but you're also going to feel what it's going to have to go against a Bok pack. So you're now going to spend time doing live scrums against the best scrum in the world. And it's a cauldron, and that's it. They said that Carly Sadi said that, after the first scrummaging session, he basically, like, it all went black. And next thing you know, Sia Khalees was helping him up off the floor. And Sia said, are you all right? And Carly said, let's do it again. Because he's somebody who just loves scrummaging. But that's somebody who's played in the top 14, played for the Lions, played for the Sharks, been around the block. And he said that the scrummaging sessions are a different level. And that's what they've done with Zach Portland, is they've said, right, come in. And we're going to, right, youngster. And this is what I also love. You'd love to just be a fly on the wall in these training sessions, because you come in there and you're looking at some of these props going, shit, these are the best players in the world. And they're saying, well, let's see if you can cope. And I'm sure he was out-scrummed a few times, but he will also have learned. And then Ox will say, listen, this is why I'm getting the better of you. This is why you're struggling. And Wilco Low will say, right, this is how you get the better of Ox. This is how you find these early gains. And just by doing all of that, his development will have, we've probably accelerated 2-3 years worth of playing in the URC by being in the box setup for 6 months. That's how quickly I think, he's improved. And that's how important it is to be able to give these opportunities to these players, because they're just, Riley Norton, the amount of he would have learned in the last month being in the setup, playing for the Boks, compared to if you've been doing a preseason for the Stormers, is huge. Bok Kiwi says, here in New Zealand, the media is boasting after the French game that the All Blacks are back. I think it's way too early to say that. I don't think we will see the exceptional All Blacks side come August. Good, yes, excellent, no. I mean, they look good. They look good. And I was watching a very interesting podcast with Craig Cooper, and he was saying he's never felt so assured and like feels like he knows what he's doing and kind of comfortable in an environment as when he joined the World Rugby squad under Dave Rennie. And he said what Dave Rennie does so well is he has a very clear plan, and you know exactly where you stand, and you know exactly where to play. And I think that kind of fault is what was lacking with the All Blacks, is that they had kind of plans, but when things didn't go, they didn't really know how to adapt, and they didn't really know, okay, well, now what? And I think what was interesting over the weekend is we saw the All Blacks adapting to what the French were doing and being able to cope with it. And Cam Roigard said that, he kicked less, for example. So there was definitely a shift on the Saturday. It wasn't a leftover of what Scott Robertson's done kind of thing. There was definitely a Dave Rennie impact, and Umaga and all the new coaches. There's definitely a bit of an impact on them. Obviously, it's not a first choice French side, so it's difficult to kind of gauge exactly where this New Zealand side is. So we've kind of got to, we're like, oh, it looks good, but is it as strong? What we'll be able to see is come 2 weeks' time when they take on Ireland. First of all, they'll have 2 games under their belt from an All Blacks point of view, so they'll be a bit more cohesive. And then they're playing against a side which is one of the top sides in the world. Yes, they got pushed by Australia, which I think probably said more about Australia than I think Ireland, although I don't think Ireland are as strong as they were a year or two ago. But then we'll be able to get a better idea of where the All Blacks are, because they were playing against at least a first-choice side. It is at least a first-choice Irish side. Yes, plenty of injuries in there, but they picked as strong as they can pick. Not a French side, which was missing a lot of your big players, but it's still a very good French side. Gravity Heights says, if as an Aussie, I'm envious of the Boks depth and quality cattle. Any Aussie qualified players in SA, hands off our cattle. To be fair, I mean, I think as an Aussie, I would be very, very excited after what I saw. And I think the Wallabies have been getting slowly better. And I think that Carter Gordon looked like a completely different player when he played over the weekend. The Wallabies looked like a different player with him on there. So I think that as an Aussie, you don't have the depth. I think, and that's probably the main point you're kind of making, is that don't have the depth that the Boks have. In terms of Carter Gordon went off, made a big difference. Ben Donaldson's not a bad player, but that's the big thing, is not having the depth. And I think as a Wallaby supporter, for example, I'd be quite excited by what I've seen in terms of the progression. And I think starting 15 for the Wallabies is a good side, but there's a marked drop off when players get injured or go down, and as the bench starts to come on, and as the season gets on and you get more and more injuries, there's definitely a bit of a drop off in quality. And that's where the Boks are just so healthy, because we're looking at the side, and what's childish is when you start to name a side that's not playing, because that would look like Oxenshire, Malcolm Marx, Thomas Dutoy, Eben Etzebeth, Lua Diaga, or Archias Neyman, Sia Khaleesi, let's say Albert Lowe at 7, for example, is on the bench. But even if you're not even saying in the 23, then you could have Franco Mostert at 7, for example, Jasper Wieks at 8. You could go Kobus Reinach 9, Martin Liebach 10, or Sasha 10, Kirtley 11, Chesn Colby 14, Damon Delinde next to Ethan Hooker at 13, or Lakanya if he came back at 13, and you could have a Quan Horn's the thing, but at 15 you could have Sasha at 15, for example, and that's a 15 of players who are not even in this 23, and that's a proper 15, and that's the main point, is that not only are the Boks playing at the highest level, but they've just got the depth. And think about the standards of training when you think we've got this amount of quality players. And this is where the All Blacks were so good during that time when they were just unmatched. You had players, you had centers like Amar Nanu or Alsa Sunnyba Williams. Those were your 2 center options. You had Conrad Smith at outside center. He was one of the best players ever. You had a Ben Smith at fullback. If you're not, you had you had Bowden Barrett coming through. You had a Israel Dag. You had wings like Savia who came in with that. You had Noholo who came through. Even if you look at the pack, you had so many. Jerome Kano and Kieran Reid. There's so many players that could barely get into the All Black side despite being top players. And that's the point, is that when you have that kind of depth, your standards are so high, and it's where France are trying to build a lot of depth. It's where Ireland were looking much better, but I think now we're seeing Ireland, a bit of a generation starting to change, and they're not they're struggling a little bit with that depth, because you had centers, you had a Bandiaki, a Robbie Henshaw, a Gary Ringrose, and Stuart McCloskey were barely making it. Now Robbie Henshaw's injured quite a lot. McCloskey's playing quite well, so you still got a reasonable amount of depth at centers, but same as Gary Ringrose is also quite injured, so you don't quite have that necessary reliability. You've lost to James Lowe. Mac Hansen's not playing as much. Keith Earls as retired. So they definitely are losing the kind of depth that they used to have, and the kind of experience they had. Conor Murray retiring, Peter O'Mahony retiring, and Johnny Sexton retiring. These are 100-cap players that Ireland have lost. And the big thing when you look at the Boks is that Evans not playing this. Evans not playing at the moment. He's our most capped Bok of all time. But you can still put in a Luat Diog and a Franco Mostert who will have 180 caps between them. You can throw in an Arcas name, and he's got over 50 caps to his name. Ruan Okia is very quickly accumulating caps. I mean, I think he must be on close to about 20 odd now. Where's my press release? And that's kind of the whole point, is to because we keep changing the entire time, you don't have to wait. So where's Ruan Okia? Yeah, it's his 20th game this weekend already. And it feels like his career's barely started. I mean, Damien Willemse, it feels like he's played more than 50 caps, but I mean, he's 26 years old, 27 years old. And because we rotate so much, yes, we might not have some players who've been playing for 5-6 years who've got up to that 100, 50, 60 caps. But the spread of the caps, I mean, let's go through the caps, and 1 through to 15. Okay, so Bowen Fenter, I mean, this is only and it even says lines next to his name. Come on, the lads. He's in the second season for the Boks, and he's arguably our third choice loosehead, fourth choice loosehead. He's got 8 caps to his name. By the end of the season, he'll have over 10 caps for the Boks. Jan Grobler, 9 caps. Wilco Low, 30th cap this weekend. Kubas Visa, just his 3rd game, one of the more inexperienced players. Ruan Okia, 20 games. After the season, it could be 25, 26 games. Halfway to that 50 already. Paul de Villiers is only a 2nd cap. Peter Sheriff, the 97th cap. Evan Lewis, this is 9th cap. Ambrose Pierce, 8th cap. Andre Paul, 85 caps. But Kane Moody's got 24 caps already. And Kane Moody's, 22 years old? 23, I think, maybe now? So he's 23, 2024 this year, and he's got 24 caps to his name. Damien Willemse, 50 caps. Jesse Creel, 88 caps. Edel van der Merwe in his 6th cap. Apele Fassi, 15 caps. So we look at the caps, the average caps per player in the backline is 39. And that includes a player like Edel van der Merwe, who's playing just his 6th international game. You've got an Ambrose Pierce playing just his 8th international game. Apele Fassi playing his 16th. And yet there's still an average of 39 caps, an average of 21 in the forwards. Most of that, yes, with Peter Steph the toy. The bench is obviously very inexperienced. An average of 9 caps. The most cap player on the bench is Grant Williams with 29. After that, Ulrich Lowe is the only one with more than 10 caps. But this is the big thing, is that we're not going to go to the World Cup with players who have got less than 10 caps. We might, I mean, if things don't go well, but, something like Jan Hendrik Wessels, we played 1 test out of about 12 we're going to play. We've got another 2 now, 6 with the greatest rivalry, 7 with Argentina, 10, 11, 12 tests. We've still got another 12. We've got 12 tests in total. So something like Jan Hendrik Wessels, they can play him half the amount of games. If all of these players played only 6 games, only played half of the season, inverted commas, and we kind of swap between them the entire time, we can still put another 6 caps into all of these current players, which means Apele Fassi could start next season with 21 caps to his name. That's kind of that's an experienced campaign. I mean, if you play 21 international games, that's a lot. Yeah, maybe it might have only been 2 seasons, inverted commas, but by the time you go into your 3rd season of international rugby, 4th season of international rugby, and that's the thing, because the way we do our caps, yes, there are 12 games in a season, but you're not going to play more than 7 or 8, which means that by the time you get to 20, 25, 26, you're in your 4th season. So you've been around the block for 4 years now. So you're not a stranger to the setup. So you could go to the World Cup with 20 caps, but you'll feel like a seasoned international. And the fact that we've got players who are at 96 caps, 85 caps, 88 caps, shows you that there are still players that play week in, week out. But I mean, as I said, Bowen Fenter is our fourth choice loosehead. Other looseheads that have been played in the last few years, obviously Steven Kitsoff, Oxenchair, Gerard Stennekamp, Instu Tunu, Janine Vessels has played at loosehead. So you've had 5 other looseheads, for example, ahead of Bowen Fenter, inverted commas. But he's also got 8 caps to his name, 9 caps, could be 12, 13 caps. So if he goes to the World Cup next year, it'll be his 3rd season of international rugby. He's not going to feel like a newcomer on the block. Jan Grobler is somebody I think we need to give quite a few caps to. I think Marnus van der Merwe is frustratingly injured because I think he would have played quite a lot of rugby. But Wilco Low, he's been drafted, and Thomas Totoy. These are now our 2 sort of prime loosehead because we've lost the experience of France Moherbe. We've lost the experience of Trevor Nyakane. Zach Porthen is going to be 11, 12 caps by the end of the season. He'll get his 5th one this weekend. I think he'll continue to play. So if he does go to the World Cup, again, he'll be into his 3rd year of international rugby, maybe only 12, 13 caps, but that would have been 6 Bok camps. By the time you think of a July camp, an August camp, a November camp, 3 different camps there. So he's into his 2nd camp. August could be his 3rd camp, November 4th camp, 5th camp next year before we go to the World Cup. So if he goes to the World Cup, it's his 6th Bok camp and environment. So, he's also played overseas. He's played over in Europe for the Boks, not just for the URC. I think we'll take him over to Australia and that will be an interesting thing because Australia, a once-off test in Australia is a big opportunity to take players who haven't played in Australia over to Australia and say, right, this is what Australia is like, people. This is what it smells like, feels like. This is what the crowd's like. This is what the conditions are like. And that means that next year when we go into it, that they've all had that kind of experience. So I think that'll be a very interesting squad because I don't think we'll see somebody like a Peter Steph Totoy going over there. I don't think we'll see the old generation. I think we will take a younger side that very much a World Cup, planning side over to Australia for that experience. You don't need to take Andre Pollard over to Australia for a once-off test after the Greatest Rivalry Tour. You really don't. You take a good squad over to USA and then you send a different squad out to Australia. And I think that will be the plan. K3 Andy saying, it looks a decent team. One of our members, as mentioned, you can not only win tickets to go watch the Boks, but lots of stuff, including tactical breakdowns on a weekly basis that we see on Rugby Unlocked. You can get the full PDF and the likes of that in the members club. So go and join the members club. It is the pinned comment. TCM says, would prefer Moya at 10 ahead of Pollard. Look, he's a big prospect. He's not going to go to the World Cup, though, I don't think. So I'm not overly worried about him not playing. I think him just being in the squad is really good for his development. He's now a 2031 project player, really. 2035 project player. I mean, in 2035, we won't even be 30 yet. And he might have been in the Boks squad for 9 years. Imagine, you could be 9 years into your Bok career and you're not even 30. This is why I can't emphasize how amazing the setup is, because you can be around for so long from such a young age. At the same time, you've got players. Cobus Ryan's 36 years old. He's not the oldest player. Dwayne Vermeulen was 39 years old, 40 years old. Vusi Moyo could have a 20-year career. He could be playing in 2036. He could play in the 2031, 35, 39, and 44. If you really, think. You could be playing 4 World Cups. And that's assuming he misses next year's World Cup. So players' careers are getting longer, especially because we do rotate so much. So he could play for 20 years. He might not be at 200 caps. He's not going to play 10 games every year. So he could play for 20 years and play 150 games or 120 games, but he could also play for 20 years because we are very intentional about rotating and, from an S&C point of view, monitoring players and making sure we can kind of extend their careers. So Paul's saying we need younger players to also play, but we've got younger players playing. And the biggest problem is, what do we consider young? Because somebody mentioned it, they said most players kind of debut around 26, 27. That's when you start really getting to your next phase of your rugby career. I think your best years are probably from 25 to 35. those are probably your best years. Some players will go on beyond that, but that's kind of your 10-year run. I'm playing my best rugby. And that's 10 years is a long time, eh? I mean, we go back 10 years ago and we were in the midst of, a disaster for West Rugby when they told Alistair Coetzee he couldn't pick anybody from overseas. And we had brand new teams and the likes of that. So 10 years is a very, very long time. And I'm saying that you kind of get to your peak 25 to 35. So anything for me below 30, let's say below 28, I consider a relatively young player because that's a player who is going to be here now and the next World Cup cycle. So you can't call somebody like a Jan Grobbelaar and say, oh, he's not a young player. Well, he's going to be there in 2031. He's going to be 32 years old. That's perfectly fine. I look at a 32-year-old in the same way I look at a 24-year-old in terms of, athletic ability, they're fine. But a 32-year-old's got an extra 6 years of experience, 8 years of experience. So, there is definitely young players in this side. Apele Fassi, young player. Edel van der Merwe, I think he's 31. Jesse Creel is not exactly slowing down. Dane Willems is young. Kane Moody's young. Ambrose Sapir hasn't hit 30 yet. Evan Roos is young. Paul de Villiers is young. Ruben O'Keefe is young. Jan Grobbelaar, as mentioned, is young. Bowen Venter is not old. And props play even longer. Kobus Wiese is not even 30 yet. So, he can be someone who's in the next World Cup cycle. Jadinja Wessel, Nstuko Qunu, and Zach Porthen, they're all very young. Zach Porthen, again, I mean, he's got another 4 World Cups in him. Nstuko Qunu is young. Jadinja Wessel is young. Ben Jason Dixon isn't old. Vincent Stuka is quite young. Ulrich Lowe is still quite young. And I said, because young, 24, 25 is not old. It's still young in the rugby career. 26 is young, really. And if you make a debut at 26 years old, you can still play international rugby for 8, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years. Kobus Reinach, who has been the definition of a late bloomer, he's played more in 35, 36 years old than he has in all the previous years. So we're going to wrap up there, people. Thank you very much for joining and for being part of the discussion. It's always been a lot of fun. Please do smash a like on the way out. Please do consider joining the Members Club and getting access to the PDFs of the analytical breakdowns, as well as opportunities to win prizes, such as 2 Springbok tickets to the Greatest Rivalry Tour match at the FNB Stadium. Please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. The Rusty Erasmus press conference is on the channel, so you can go and check it out and see what he has to say about this whole team. And you can go pick it apart as much as you want. And we'll see you guys all tomorrow when we break this down. Also, a reminder to keep your eyes on More Than Disorder, aka The Mad Show. There is its own separate social media channels on Instagram, the likes of them. So please go and check out The Mad Show on socials. Go and follow us on our different socials as well. We're on Instagram, TikTok, the whole works. And come and be part of the Forever Sports community. We've got so many cool projects coming up, and we want you guys to be a part of it. And when I say a part of it, I don't just mean we want you guys to be able to watch it. I genuinely mean to be a part of it. Your questions are part of our content. What you guys want is what we want to produce. For the fans, by the fans. That's the statement that we made 6 years ago. And so you guys guide what we do. And being part of our different social and stuff like that is being able to get that feedback in and kind of guide what you guys all want to see. We'll see you tomorrow. We're going to break this down. We're going to be live tomorrow and Wednesday. And More Than Disorder will drop on Wednesday afternoon and evening. We've got Rugby Unlock coming this week, Sunday. Watch out the video from yesterday as well. Very cool breakdown with Ronaldo Meyer, former Cheetahs analyst. And obviously lots of Springbok content to come as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me. And see you guys.